Welcome back to Child Mental Health for Pediatric Clinicians, the podcast formerly known as Psyched for Peds. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Faluco, child psychiatrist and mom. Today, we're introducing a new series for the podcast called Child Mental Health Talks with Parents. In today's inaugural edition of Child Mental Health Talks to Parents, we're going to meet with some parents of kids with ADHD to take a deeper dive and learn insights into what it is like raising kids with ADHD and learn from their experiences about how we as clinicians can do an even better job of caring for kids. I'm really excited to introduce two parents who are advocates for neurodiversity, and between the two of them have 4 kids with ADHD. They've also used some of their own personal experience as parents to give back to the community by starting a mental health and neurodiversity committee at their local elementary school. They're going to tell us a little bit about their journey and share the early signs and clues that made them wonder about ADHD. And I'm so excited because through this discussion, we as clinicians can learn about what are the questions that are best to ask and the signs specifically to look for in a child that may have ADHD. Without further ado, welcome Ashley and Lauren.
Hi.
Hi.
So happy to have you guys. Really excited about our conversation coming up. Let's start by talking about the Mental Health and Neurodiversity PTA committee that you guys started. Lauren, I know you're the one who came up with this. Tell us a little bit about what you guys do and what motivated you to start it.
First of all, thank you for having us. We're so excited to be here and talk about this important topic. So I started the Mental Health and Neurodiversity PTA committee because as a parent of 2 neurodivergent kids, I was kind of feeling like on an island a little bit. So we had them diagnosed and it's like, here's your diagnosis, go off into the world and
good luck.
Good luck. Get your 504 plan. So what's a 504 plan? I was just feeling like alone in the advocacy piece. And so I knew as I would talk to other parents, I'm not the only one here that's going through this, trying to support my children. I knew there were other kids who had autism and ADHD, and I wanted to create a community. So I decided to start this PTA committee to create that community of parents and to support other parents around me and support the teachers as well.
Lauren, that's such a great idea. Ashley, can you tell us about some of the ways your mental health neurodiversity group supports parents, students, and teachers?
We do a lot of really great events throughout the year to be able to provide that support. So we have a book club where we talk and discuss books, and we do a movie night at school where we invite the whole entire school to come watch a movie. So last year we did Inside Out 2, where we got the message across about anxiety to kids in a fun way. And we have a support group for parents, and we meet once a month, and it's just a really great to engage with one another.
How amazing that both of you are taking a need that you internally have and giving back to the community and creating this amazing support system and service to help other parents and other kids and the entire school better understand and support neurodiverse kids. And the Inside Out 2 movie screening sounds so much fun.
It was fun.
So from a parent perspective, can you guys tell us a little bit about the clues that you noticed in your children that made you wonder about ADHD?
Sure. So I have 2 children. I have a girl and a boy. And for our boy, we really noticed something was different with his hyperactivity. So he's always running around. He can do sports and play with friends all day. He is never, ever tired, even at bedtime. He can't sit still at dinner. He's always bopping up and down and around. So he requires a lot of movement. For our daughter, it was a lot different because she doesn't have that hyperactivity piece. For her, it was a lot more about executive functioning. So I could tell that she would struggle with simple routines. Even as a 7 or 8-year-old, she knew she would have to get dressed every morning, but she couldn't do it by herself. And she needed constant reminders. She needed me to help her pick out her outfit. She could not clean her room by herself. It just was an overwhelming task. And so I would have to always go in to the room with her and help break it down by category. Hey, let's do all of your books first, and let's do all of your toys. Okay, now let's put away your clothes. So she just can't, to this day, she still can't do that by herself. And then she's disorganized. Her room is like a complete disaster, which I know a lot of kids have messy rooms, but she just really thrives in the chaos, and she will forget things. She'll lose things. She's really talkative with others, which is a great quality to have, but it does also result in a lot of interrupting of people, and that can be tough for her too. So it's a lot of that impulse control as well.
Wow. And going back to the executive function part, and just to review, for everybody who's listening, executive functioning, what we're really talking about is higher level abilities to problem solve, to take a multi-step task or project and break it down, and also be able to make changes on the fly. If you're interrupted between step 2 and step 3, to know how to reset, and then, of course, to control your impulses. And so you're talking about how your daughter would have trouble getting dressed in the morning or cleaning her room. You can imagine if you struggle with executive functioning and mom says, clean your room, you're like, that's completely overwhelming. There's books on the floor and there's clothes over there, and I don't even know what that means, and where do you begin?
Exactly.
And I imagine as a parent, it can be really frustrating, and it would be hard to understand. They're not trying to be defiant. They're not trying to be difficult or overly emotional. It truly is completely overwhelming.
Exactly. Like I could tell that it wasn't just something she didn't want to do. It was something that she genuinely could not do herself. And I think one other thing I'll mention too is our school routine in the days would just be so difficult, right? Every morning we do the same exact thing. You get up, you get dressed, you have breakfast, you brush your teeth, you get your shoes, and we leave. And no matter how often we did that, she still couldn't get it down by herself. So now as a 4th grader, she needs those constant reminders. Okay, it's time to go do this now. Or I send her upstairs, please go brush your teeth. And then 10 minutes later, I yell up to the stairs, up the stairs to her, and I'll be like, hey, did you brush your teeth? It's time to leave for school. And she's like, oh no, sorry, I got distracted. I'm reading a book. And so that was also a really big sign for us.
I love how you're fleshing this out. Like, one of the questions that we ask as clinicians when we're trying to suss out ADHD is, does your child have trouble with multi-step commands? If you ask them to do 2 things in a row or 3 things in a row, can they do all 3 of those things, or do they get sidetracked? And what a great example you're giving of, like, the classic example of the morning routine that has a bunch of repeated 5 or 6 steps. The other thing that makes me think about is how visual reminders can be so helpful. Making those silly little charts that say morning routine, and there's a little picture of a toothbrush to remind you first brush your teeth, and the next thing is put your shoes on, or whichever the order is.
Yeah, and we've actually, interestingly enough, come up with a variation of that tool because we had tried that in the past for her and it still didn't work. But only recently did we come up with the same type of tool, but there's more tactile interaction with it. It's almost like a little flip chart, and she'll have the tab for brush teeth and she has to move it from one side to the other side. And that's actually helped a lot more. And so that's not something I would have thought of, but even just making that small tweak has helped her brain understand it.
We have a similar thing where my kids love to write with expo markers. So we have a laminated version of that chart on our refrigerator. And one thing I will say too about, as a parent of a child with ADHD and as somebody with ADHD myself, it's this constant need to come up with a system that might work for a month or 2 months, and then you find it doesn't work anymore. And now I have to come up with a new system. There's your sign. If you're wondering if your child has ADHD, do you change systems a lot?
Yes. That also makes me think about parenting in general. I'm like, you're never able to catch up.
No.
Something will work for a little bit, and then something new is thrown in your general direction, and there you are again.
For sure.
So, Ashley, you've talked about a lot about the executive function issues with your daughter that made you wonder, this possibly could be ADHD. Lauren, what's your experience? What were some of the early clues or signs that made you wonder about ADHD in your kids?
So interestingly, I think mine is like the exact opposite experience. And so we talk about gender differences and stuff. I have a boy and a girl. So my boy is older and he has autism and ADHD. So he is extremely creative and at the same time really struggles with organization and a lot of the struggles that Ashley's daughter would struggle with, like cleaning up and prioritizing tasks. So all those executive function, he really struggles with those. It really came down to his profile once we got tested and we were looking at that. And he was very bright with the visual, spatial reasoning, but his working memory and processing speed was a lot lower. And so having that differential was a red flag of maybe there's something going on here.
So to recap, in your son, you noticed that he had problems with organization, problems with executive function and prioritizing things. And then when you had him do a full IQ test, what you noticed was relative areas of weakness in processing speed index, as well as in the working memory index. And these symptoms, together with other problems with hyperactivity and impulsivity and inattention, are the common pattern that we see in kids with ADHD. So tell us about what were clues that you noticed in your daughter that she might have ADHD.
So for my daughter, it was a little bit confusing because she couldn't sit still, like a typical ADHD symptom, something that you think of, like hyperactivity. When she was watching a show, she'd be bouncing around and liked a lot of that proprioceptive input. We also had sensory issues with getting dressed and interrupting others constantly because she thinks she's going to forget what's in her head. And so she has to get it out now or else it's gone forever. One thing that I noticed with her too, and this was something that I was just really confused about, was word recall. So she'd be talking about something and she's trying to get the thought out before she forgets the whole thought, but she can't come up with the word that she's thinking of. So a lot of times she'd say the thing or over there.
Her mind is moving very rapidly,
Yes.
And she's thinking about a lot of things, and she doesn't want to stop and take the time particularly to remember this weird word that she doesn't use very often. So she just inserts something else and keeps on going.
So we took her to have an evaluation. So we thought we'd have her tested. So she had that same sort of spiky profile that my son had, very high in a lot of areas. And then working memory, processing speed was lower.
And so for her, the working memory issue manifested as kind of trouble remembering the word in your brain.
Yeah, exactly. That's unimportant details over there. But
Yes.
yeah, I don't have time for that. Let me get my thought out because
Yes.
the big picture for her, she can very much see the big picture and things, but details for her, she's just not into the details.
Yes. And I would say that phenotype is very classic of ADHD. Certainly not all kids with ADHD, but a lot of people with ADHD are incredibly creative and can think outside of the box and can have this amazing big picture. And then when you sit down and you say, I'm going to need you to take me from step 1 to step 571 and make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, like people with ADHD are just like, that you have no patience for that. That's incredibly boring.
Yeah.
And it's much, your brain is oriented towards creativity and big vision and all of these incredible gifts. And it is boring to go from step 1 to step 571. So.
Yeah, 100%.
And we're going to take a pause right now and recap some of what we've learned from Ashley and Lauren. So as clinicians, things that we can look for and questions we can ask when we're assessing someone for ADHD. Number 1, ask about the morning routine. And does the child have trouble following multi-step commands? When you ask them to do multiple things in a row, can they easily get distracted or feel overwhelmed? Second of all, for kids who have had the benefit already of having some type of psychoeducational testing, take a look at their full-scale IQ and at the various subsections. And you might see what Lauren called a spiky profile, where there are elevated scores in a lot of the subsections, but particularly or relatively lower scores in working memory and processing speed. Our plan is to continue the conversation next episode with Ashley and Lauren and learn from the perspective of parents about masking among kids with ADHD and the toll that that takes on self-esteem and energy. Finally, Ashley and Lauren will tell us about what are the things that they wish that everybody knew about ADHD. Thanks so much for listening in. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend and click the plus button to follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thanks for listening to Child Mental Health for Pediatric Clinicians. See you next time.